next phase of the EPPP is to try and bridge that gap, which is why the Bath School stuff has always been quite good, because it has been a sort of stepping stone, not only to go that way, but also to go that way. But generally, throughout the country, that stepping stone isn't there. And because of that, you've had lots of entrepreneurs, as a matter of one way of putting it, who've tried to bridge that gap and trying to make money out of doing that. Some are better than others. Not all of them are bad. What it means for the grassroots clubs is, whilst all the Premier League clubs are getting all this support in terms of the coaching, in terms of the support for the player, and in terms of the facilities, who is doing the same for you guys? But when I started off thinking, trying to think from a grassroots perspective, and even from the Bath School's perspective, I was asking the questions, what's our responsibility with you guys running your clubs and your teams? What is it that you want to achieve, you're trying to do? And you could put lots of things down, I think, but I tried to group it under 3 headings, and I thought that's probably it. So then I asked myself, well, how does one sort of approach these responsibilities then? And when I sat down and thought about how to write the Bath School's curriculum and the programme, the biggest thing for me was I've got to figure out how we can challenge the kids. It's the same in the classroom and teaching. As long as you can challenge people in the classroom, they're engaged and they're interested. If it's too easy or it's too difficult, then it's out of reach, and that's when they get bored. That's when they mess around. So, for me, the important word was challenge. But it's not just on the technical front. What I found is if you look after the social element, actually the technical element comes anyway. You don't have to push it too hard. Again, focusing on the challenge bit, what are the main challenges of a grassroots club to achieve those 3 things? And I thought, if I'm in a grassroots club, and say I'm chairman of the club, and I've got 6 to 8 age groups to look after, what are my problems? Expertise of coaches. A lot of your coaches will be fathers, and you need those people, because there's not a lot of people who give their time voluntarily, and all that effort. Another one I thought is continuity between teams, because everyone does this voluntarily and it's part-time. How often are you able to get together and compare, talk about players, talk about your coaching ideals, talk about how teams play, which sessions have worked well with certain groups of players, all these sorts of things. It doesn't happen a lot, largely through a lack of time, but also possibly a lack of structure. And that I doubt very many grassroots clubs have a curriculum which goes from 7 to 16, and where it's mapped out. These are the objectives that should be a 7 or 8-year-old should be learning. The 9, 10, and then commitment again is linked to the expertise, I suppose. Access to training. I suppose what I mean by that is how often they train. Like I said, the academy boys are doing 4 to 5 sessions a week now. You guys, because of facilities, the cost and everything else, you probably get them once a week, plus the game day. And the other thing is trust, motivations. I feel a bit sorry for grassroots clubs, because you guys are putting in all this working, but then your players and parents are being pulled in lots of different directions. The idea works similar on the Premier League model, in that the Bath Schools Trust, which is now a charity, would be at the centre, and they would then work with 5 or 6 clubs, and the idea would be to try and put clubs together who have a similar mentality, because all clubs are very different, and that's not a problem. think clubs should maintain their identity and their individuality. I think that's really important. But I think you can align beliefs and philosophy. And I think if you get a group of people like that, you can share of each other, and you can really work together. Because there's three strands to it, and the first strand is which you were talking about really is to do with the framework, the structure. I think we could help. I think every club has to have their own set of values, what they believe is important for their coaches and for their kids, and they have to have their own culture. And for me, culture are behaviours. So I'll give you typical examples. I expect when the Bath lads come to training, I expect them to come and greet the coaches and say hello. Everyone will have their own culture and their own values, which is fine. But I think we can help and support on shaping those things if you're not sure. So the second strand is that once you've got your values as a club and once you've got your your culture of how you want to operate, you can then start to think about what your curriculum is from the foundation phase and the youth development phase. What is it we want to teach them is basically the curriculum. You need a playing philosophy. What do you play at 7-a-side? What do you play at 8? What do you play at 9? What do you play at 11? And why? Why do you choose that system? And I think for me, it should be the same in a club all the way through. Everyone plays in a certain style, right the way through to the top, leading into a first team. The next level then, so you've got your club support, which is probably at committee level, and you probably want a working group within that committee that will do that. And it is a lot of work, but I think if you're in it for a few weeks, you can crack it and get it done. Is in the coach support. And for me, the three key words, it's got to be regular, it's got to be immediate when it's needed, and it's got to be specific. Ryan said earlier with people being generic. These are the three things that you don't get from FA courses. So whatever we were able to provide in terms of coach support, it would be under those three banners. One of your biggest problems at the moment is, from what I've heard and what I've seen, is that your players get taken away from you to go and play, say, in the JPM and with various development groups. Now, it's like I said to you before, that some are better than others, but the problem will always remain that a particular child could have 3+ coaches. You could have the school coach, you, and the like the JPL coach, whoever it is. So, in terms of coming back to the word of continuity, where's the continuity for that child? If you did it as part of a cluster, everybody is more or less following the same curriculum because that's what everyone's agreed on. I don't think your values and cultures will actually be that far apart, because the idea of the cluster is that you put like-minded clubs together. And any coaching that takes place can be easily shared with the manager. So for example, if we said to you, right, I've got 5 clubs involved, we'll start off with the under-9s. If all of you put forward 4 players from each club and you decide who they are, we'll do a training programme for them which runs off the curriculum, and every session plan we then feed to the managers of those boys, and it's their choice then whether they can then do that session plan with all of the group when they go back to their for their training session with the club, because then you've got 4 boys who more or less know what to do and can actually help the others achieve those objectives in that session. Also, within that cluster, if you get those 4 kids together in that session, the coaches can come and watch or participate as well. All right? So at least you've got that consistency where the kids are learning the same principles and the same objectives all the way through the week, instead of it being all over the place. So instead of your kids being out of reach, you've now got them within reach, even though they're doing extra session. And at the end of the day, you're not going to stop this, because parents, they're paying for it, and sometimes they're paying for a load of crap, if I'm being honest, but they're still paying for it and they're still going. So you're not going to stop it. You know, I tried for the first couple of years in fighting it, but you just go dizzy. You haven't got the time. You just spend half your life on the phone. I don't think you're going to stop it. What you have to do is give them alternative. If you give them an alternative that suits and satisfies, then they won't go to these other places anymore. That's just my feeling on it.
So you're saying, Tim, that as coaches we'd have access to the boys and the sessions that you'd be putting on, say, midweek, and an option to take bits or all of it to our rest of our wider clubs on the Saturday, squad on the Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did the cluster session on a Monday. Yeah, the coaches would be invited to come and be part of that session, or to just come and watch. And then after that session, we could email the session plan to everybody. It completes the circle. Yeah. And this is what we're finding with the bar schools. What now? We've been going for 10 years, and those at the top end that are coming out, we're now trying to bring back in to support. And it may not be every week because they're busy people, they've got their own things to do. But a couple of weeks ago, we got Max O'Leary in, who's playing at City now as a goalkeeper, came and did a session with some of our goalkeepers, made their week, and it helps us. And we'll bring him in whenever he can. It's the same with Chris. Chris is going to come in with us now on a Wednesday. Henry Taylor's been doing it. Toby's 15. Toby Harding. We took him to Dortmund as a helper, and he was fantastic. He gave us a break because he couldn't put the kids to bed. But he was brilliant, and it's useful for him because he's learning skills about dealing with young people and responsibility and all these things. He doesn't even realise it. But I don't know what you think, Ryan, but I think that actually is probably one of the most important aspects of doing this, is getting hold of those kids. Well, the reason I put this up is I don't want you thinking that what we're suggesting here is that we give you a template, or we're going to give you a curriculum, we're going to give you everything, and you just have to go away and do it, because that's not the way it works. This has to come from you, actually. And I think if we would create a cluster, we would be sitting in the middle, and we would be there as an advice point, really, and to give you support to drive it, because you will need to drive this, because you're going to come across people that don't want to do it because it's hard work, and you'll probably lose some, but then the ones you gain will be the right ones, and be there for longer. Just have a read through that. So as a cluster group, these are what I thought would probably be the main characteristics. For me, that slide is the reason for being part of this sort of initiative. You understand what our motives are with this. Our motives are not to take over. It's to support, and the reason for that is because I've worked with from the league from an administrative point of view, and with a few clubs now from a pro level, and it does worry me what's going on. And if I'm being honest, my most enjoyable work, and what I think definitely what I've enjoyed most, has been at a lower level. But I can just see it becoming harder for you guys, because there's so much money going in at the top still, and they're moving that way, and you're not getting that same support, and it's very hard for you to move forward. So it's how can we bridge the gap, essentially. I mean, that's what this is about. It's bridging the gap. How are those players going to be supported? Well, they're only going to be supported if the clubs are able to support them through facilities, through coaching, through coach education, and that's it.